This is the intro video for section 9.2 in Algebra 1. And in section 9.1, we looked at how to solve quadratics using the square root property. And in this video, we're going to look at how to solve quadratics using something called complete the square, or completing the square. Complete the square is a very powerful tool in solving quadratics. Complete the square will work in every single case of quadratics. Most of the quadratics we've looked at up to this point have been carefully designed to factor nicely. We're going to essentially here be looking at the idea of what do we do if the quadratic doesn't factor. Completing the square is one of our options. So in order to do this, let's remember how we factor certain types of quadratics. And so I'm going to encourage you at this point to pause the video and try these two examples here where you're factoring. And then once you've gotten those factored, maybe push play again, you can see what resulted. Okay, so if we're going to factor the first one, the first one factors as x plus 4 times x plus 4. And we maybe would better write that as x plus 4 quantity squared. You could, of course, FOIL that back out to check to see that that really is the case, but it is. The other one here would factor as x minus 5 times x minus 5, perhaps better written as x minus 5 squared. So notice how both of these quadratics factored as a perfect square. This was x plus 4 squared. This one was x minus 5 squared. So I'm wondering here if we could notice the pattern that shows up when we compare our factoring that we got with these with the b term, the original b term. So in other words, I'd be asking you to compare this number here with this number here and this number here with that number there. So if you think about this, in both cases, wasn't this number over here, the 4, wasn't it half of 8? And this number over here, negative 5, wasn't it half of negative 10? And I think you'll find that with a perfect square trinomial like these, you'll find that that is the case every time. So as far as noticing the pattern for a perfect square is going to be x plus 1/2 of the b, or perhaps x minus 1/2 of the b, depending on how the signs work out. So it's a key point here as we think about completing the square. So let's take a look at two examples here, how we could complete the square using this concept of half of b. Okay, so for these two examples here, the instructions say complete the square. To complete the square, on x squared plus bx, we're going to always add 1/2 of b quantity squared. So I'd encourage you on these, like before, if you feel like you can do it, pause the video, see if you can get these correct, play the video to see how it went. So with this one right here, the number 1, the b is 6. So if b is 6, that means half of b would be 3. Half of b is 3. And then what we're going to do is we're going to square that. So 1/2 of b squared would equal 3 squared equals 9. So in other words, 9 is the number that would complete the square and make this a perfect square factorable trinomial. So x squared plus 6x plus 9. So in other words, there's no other number besides 9 that would turn this x squared plus 6x into a perfect square trinomial. Same kind of thing here with the second one. B is negative 8. So if b is negative 8, then 1/2 of b would be negative 4, and then 1/2 of b squared would be negative 4 squared, and that's 16. So to make this a perfect square trinomial, what I'm going to do is I'm going to add 16 onto the end of it, and that'll make this a perfect square factorable trinomial. Okay, so when you come to class, we're going to talk about what we actually do with this, but the big takeaway here would be figuring out what b is and then doing half of it and then squaring the result. That'll give us our key number to help us complete the square. And like I said, when you get to class, I'll show you what we'll do with this, and I'll see you there in class.